Months into my first posting as deputy, and already I knew I didn't belong. The people in this small, forgotten town in West Virginia were polite enough, but guarded. Every smile felt like a door half shut. They talked around things, especially about the old homestead up in the ridge. They never said its name, just gave vague directions and changed the subject. The first time I heard about it, I was refueling at a gas station off Highway 6. One of the locals leaned in, voice low, like he wasn't sure if he was sharing gossip or a warning. Said the house used to belong to some rich coal baron before the mine shut down. A family bought it cheap decades ago. Quiet folks. Then one night, the husband snapped, went after their 2 kids, claimed it was the devil that ordered him to do it. He's still doing time in state prison. The wife, she never left, didn't talk, just stayed in that house alone for years. People say she never really came back from what happened, and some say she still hasn't left. Lady used to cry all day and all night in that old house up on the ridge, back when we still went up there to check on her. Still cries, some say, even though no one really cares anymore. I first brushed it off as gossip. People out here are often lonely and have too much time to make up stories like that. But I didn't forget it. A few days later, I couldn't stop thinking about that story. The way the old man had said she might still be up there, alone, forgotten, suffering. It got under my skin. Maybe it was naive, but I started to wonder if someone should still care, if maybe she needed help, even after all these years. So I decided to head out there on my own. Just a wellness check, on my own conscience. Just me and a flashlight, off duty, driving up a defunct logging road to that house in the hills. I figured it would be nothing, probably squatters or a black bear rooting through garbage, but I still went. The house looked worse than I expected. 2 stories of mold and splinters, sitting crooked on its foundation, like it had slumped under the weight of memory. The front porch was half-eaten by rot, its boards warped and splintered. Ivy crawled over broken windows like veins. The front door was gone entirely, leaving a black, gaping mouth in the facade. But it wasn't just the house. The property itself was huge, an old estate, maybe once proud. An overgrown gravel drive curved through what had probably been a manicured yard decades ago. Now, it was waist-high with knotweed and thistle. Rusted remains of a swing set leaned crookedly in a side yard, half swallowed by brambles. A collapsed wooden shed sagged behind the house, its roof broken under the weight of fallen limbs. A dry stone well stood near the edge of the woods, covered in moss and spiderwebs. I knocked on the doorframe. No answer. Circled the perimeter. No sign of human activity. No light. No warmth. No trace of anyone living or squatting inside. But something caught my eye behind the house. The earth there had been disturbed, the dirt soft and torn up, and in it, a trail of prints, large, deep, clawed, bigger than any dog. The back door was worse, mangled, bent inward like something had forced its way through. I stood there for a long moment, staring at it. My brain tried to explain it away. A black bear, had to be. Maybe using the house for shelter. That would explain the smell and the noises I had been told about. I could live with that explanation. A bear. When I got back to work the next day, I logged the house as structurally unsound and possibly occupied by wildlife. Then I filed the report and left it at that. But the feeling didn't leave me. Something kept gnawing at me. That night after work, I couldn't shake the image of that broken back door or the clawed tracks in the dirt. I sat on my couch, bored, restless, and pulled out my phone. Searched for black bear tracks. The photos didn't match what I remembered. Bear prints were more compact, rounded, with distinct toe pads. What I saw at that house was longer, more stretched, as if made by something upright but unsteady. So I searched barefoot human tracks. That got closer. The length, the ball of the foot, the way the arch pressed into the soil. But even then, not quite right. The prints up there were too long, the marks too deep. They looked like something in between. Maybe there was someone living up there after all. I didn't call it in when I went back. I just went. I told myself it was curiosity, but I brought my sidearm, just in case it turned out to be a bear after all. The house greeted me with silence. The smell around the back porch of the old house was worse this time. Mildew, decay, but something else now, something warmer, like rot. I moved slowly, cleared the downstairs, slow and careful, gun drawn. The place was a mess, but it wasn't just surface-level rot. The furniture wasn't just broken, it was smashed, as if something large had thrown its weight around. A cabinet lay on its side in the dining room, its doors wrenched off, its contents scattered across the floor. Mold bloomed in dark fans along the corners of every room, some patches thick enough to resemble fur. The kitchen was the worst. The refrigerator had been pulled from the wall and gutted. Its door lay open on the floor, stripped of shelves. Something had clawed deep grooves into the pantry door, and the wood was warped like it had been soaked and dried 100 times. Broken dishes crunched under my boots. Flies buzzed in lazy spirals in the main living area. A rusted wood stove in the living room was surrounded by torn couch cushions and debris. Twigs, rags, even what looked like a piece of flannel shirt. A heavy scent hung there, not just mildew. As I went down a hallway, the stench became unbearable. I found the source in one of the bathrooms. The bathtub had become a larder. Inside were the remains of animals, squirrels, raccoons, the half-decayed torso of a deer, and what I think was part of a wild boar. Flies exploded from the heap when my flashlight hit it. Meat in various stages of decay was stacked like offerings, cracked bones poking through rotting flesh, fur matted with filth. The tub was stained black, the porcelain cracking under the weight of it all. It was a gruesome scene. Whoever or whatever had come through here hadn't just taken shelter. It had claimed the space. It had settled in. I had a very hard time believing that this was done by a bear or a person. But then again, there are some pretty twisted minds out there. That much I had learned being a cop. Despite the disgusting scene I had stumbled upon, I was too close to give up now. This all didn't make sense, and I wanted answers, so I decided to go upstairs. That turned out to be the worst mistake of my life, as I was about to find out. Every step creaked as I slowly crept up the old stairs, each one sounding too loud, too deliberate in the silence that pressed in around me. The walls closed in, warped by moisture and time, and the air itself felt wrong, heavy and wet like breathing through a soaked cloth. It smelled like mold and old blood, something raw and unfinished. A door at the end of the hallway stood slightly ajar. There were noises coming from inside the room, soft, faint, and unnerving. A wet clicking, like something scraping wood, and a low squeaking sound, as if something heavy shifted its weight on the old floor. The door itself shifted with a soft, moaning squeak under a faint draft, but it was the sounds behind it that made my skin crawl. I approached with my gun up, each footfall measured and tense. My heart hammered in my chest, but it wasn't just fear. It was the kind of dread that runs deeper, instinctive, primal. I felt it well before I saw anything, an invisible presence pressing down, thick and cold, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The hairs on my neck stood straight up. My mouth had gone dry. Every fiber of my body told me that whatever waited behind that door wasn't something I wanted to see. But still, I couldn't help myself. At first, I tried to peek through the gap. The door was open just enough to reveal a strip of wallpaper, faded pastel animals in a marching line, half peeled from the damp wall, a glimpse of a collapsed crib, dusty toys scattered on the floor. It was a child's room, no doubt about it, but the angle was too narrow. I could only see a small portion of the room. Standing that close, I realized the strange noises weren't just scraping or creaking floorboards. I could hear something breathing, heavy, irregular, ragged, like a snore distorted through shredded lungs. It rose and fell unevenly, each inhale wet and gurgling, each exhale wheezing out through a thick throat. It sounded labored, pained, but alive. Heart pounding, I leaned in closer, ears straining, drawn toward the horror I knew I shouldn't mess with. Then I made up my mind. I nudged the door open with my boot. In the corner, something crouched. I raised my flashlight. It was massive, hunched, curled around a filthy stuffed rabbit, which it was pressing against its cheek like a child clutching a favorite toy in the dark. At first glance, the size and shape made me think of a bear, something feral and heavy and wild. But then the light caught its limbs, and everything inside me recoiled. Its arms were far too long, too human, but wrong in proportion, like someone had stretched them out from the elbows. Each hand had 5 fingers, bony and sinewy, ending in claws that were more like talons. The skin along its limbs and shoulders was an unhealthy gray, rough and dry like thick bark, with sparse patches of bristly blackish fur clinging in clumps across its frame. Its legs were thick but uneven, built low and knotted with muscle, and just slightly too short in comparison to the arms. The body had a sloped, almost hunched posture, as if it had grown accustomed to moving on all fours, but hadn't fully committed to it. It looked like something punished and mangled by evolution, not meant for this world. Its back rose and fell with shallow breaths. As my flashlight hit it, the head turned slightly. Not quite canine, not quite human. The snout was thick and lumpy, like it had been formed unevenly. One eye was larger than the other, glowing a faint, jaundiced yellow under the shine of my torch. I don't know how long I stood there. My mind fought what my eyes were telling me. Then it dropped the stuffed rabbit. For a second, everything stood still. My flashlight beam trembled as my hands started to shake. My thoughts scrambled, trying to rationalize what I was seeing, but there was no logic to cling to. Every part of this thing was wrong. Not just its body, but the way it clutched that toy, like it remembered something it shouldn't. Like there was some human mind in there that wasn't fully gone. I realized then that this wasn't just some feral creature squatting in an old house. It was the grief, the rot, the madness left behind and shaped into nightmare-turned flesh, and I had stepped straight into its lair. The growl started deep in its chest, a wet, sick sound that vibrated through the floor. It slowly uncurled, placing one long hand on the ground, then the other. Its feet looked almost human, just too thick, too calloused. Its legs bent awkwardly. I backed up slowly, step by step. Then it lunged. Instinctively, I fired. Center mass. The shot barely rocked it. I managed to sidestep just a fraction of a second before it got me. The thing slammed into the wall behind me like a wrecking ball, not just hitting it, but breaking straight through it. Old wood and plaster exploded outward, leaving a gaping hole where the hallway wall had been. I hit the floor so hard I saw stars. My gun with the attached flashlight flew from my hand and slid across the boards. I scrambled, breath ragged, heart pounding, reaching for the weapon. But by the time I turned back, the creature was already retreating. In a blur of motion, it darted back across the hallway and slipped into the child's room, disappearing into the shadows like it had never left. From within, I heard it growling, deep, guttural, and broken. It wasn't coming after me. Not yet. It was warning me, daring me. I didn't wait to see if it would change its mind. I snatched the gun, turned, and sprinted down the stairs. Every board screamed beneath my feet. I didn't look back, not once. I cleared the porch and hit the gravel, desperate to reach my cruiser, but I didn't see it coming after me. Instead, I heard a long, shuddering moan, or howl, or whatever that was, from inside the house. A desperate cry, filled with pain and grief. I had made it. This time. I never filed a report, never told anyone about that thing. But at night, when the wind shifts through the hollows and the trees go quiet, I sometimes hear that same moan echoing down from the ridge, a sound like grief wearing a broken body. And I know she's still up there. I can't help but think she was a person once, that something happened to her. Something that didn't just break her mind, but twisted her body into what I saw. That creature is a werewolf, for all intents and purposes, or something close to it. I'm sure of that now, and yet, as far as I know, she hasn't killed anyone. Not yet. So I decided to leave her alone for the moment. Maybe that's foolish. Maybe I'm just scared. Or maybe a part of me believes that thing can still be saved, somehow. That it deserves pity, understanding, a little more time. Second encounter. I always thought I was safe in the woods. Something about being miles from people, away from traffic, screens, and voices. It cleared my head. That morning, I set out before sunrise, planning a 10-mile loop through Cold Hollow. It was my last long run before the Asheville Ultra. I'd chosen this trail because it was quiet, remote. I didn't want company. The mist hung low over the forest floor as I tightened my laces and started my fitness tracker. The first few miles were perfect. My breath synced with my stride, and the sound of my shoes against the dirt kept a steady rhythm. Nothing but birdsong and the occasional rustle from a squirrel or rabbit. Around mile 5, something changed. The peaceful rhythm of the forest shifted. First came the smell, a sour, nauseating stench like rotting meat left in the sun, growing stronger by the minute. It caught in my throat, thick and sudden, completely out of place in the cool, misty morning. Then, after about 10 minutes, I heard it. Footsteps. Not mine. A second rhythm, off-kilter. Not the predictable cadence of another runner, but a staggered shuffle followed by a crunch, as if something with an injured leg was dragging itself down the trail somewhere behind me. My pulse spiked. I stopped, turned, and listened. Silence. I shook it off. Probably an animal. But when I started running again, the sound came back, a dragging, stumbling gait that somehow kept up with me. I stopped again. "Hello?" I called. No answer. I took a few steps back down the trail, scanning the undergrowth. Then I saw someone, or something, crouched behind a fallen log about 100 feet down the trail. At first, I thought it was a person, a thin, ragged hiker maybe, curled up and shivering. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It had arms and legs, yes, but they looked too long, too angular. The limbs didn't rest naturally. The spine arched sharply, almost humped, and the head hung too low. As I stared, my brain kept trying to fit it into a human shape, but it wasn't right. Its skin, what little of it wasn't obscured by the log, looked ashen and mottled, like it had been dried out and stretched thin over bone. Patches of dark, wiry, greasy hair grew in uneven clumps across its head, back, and shoulders. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, twitchy motions. Then it lifted its head slightly. My breath caught. Its face, if you could call it that, was barely symmetrical. One eye was swollen, bulbous, the other sunken deep. Both were locked on me. It blinked, slow and deliberate. As I stared, something else registered. The face. It wasn't just disfigured. It was elongated. Not like a muzzle exactly, but stretched. The bones didn't sit where they should. The nose seemed flattened and too long. The jaw slightly protruded in a way that reminded me of an animal, not a man. It wasn't dramatic, not exaggerated like in movies, but it was wrong enough to turn my stomach. I blinked hard, hoping I was seeing it wrong. My brain scrambled to rationalize, to label it as an injury, a birth defect, a trick of the light. But the longer I looked, the more I knew that wasn't it. This thing looked like it had once been human, but now it wasn't. I wanted to call out again, but the words caught in my throat. Something in me understood that this was probably a bad idea. Then it twitched, a sudden jerk, like a puppet pulled by tangled strings. The movement lifted its head just a little higher, exposing more of its face. The jaw seemed crooked, pulled off to one side. On one side of its mouth, clearly visible beneath the twisted lip, a massive yellow canine jutted out past its lower jaw. Not like a tooth gone bad, but like something grown too long, too sharp, something meant for tearing flesh. Pure terror flooded me. My knees almost gave out. My breath stopped. That thing wasn't injured, or sick, or lost. It was something else entirely. Something that shouldn't walk the earth. It made a strange sound, half cough, half growl, then suddenly crouched low, shoulders rising, elbows bending outward. A terrible, clumsy preparation to launch forward. Then it lurched forward on arms too long for its body, its jaw slack and filled with teeth that looked shattered and twisted. That was all I needed. I bolted. I didn't think, didn't plan. I just turned and ran like my life depended on it, because my instincts told me it did. I ran, harder and faster than I ever had in my life. I didn't look back. I heard it crashing through the brush behind me, anything but subtle. After a few hundred yards, I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing, thank God. It took me just under 30 minutes to get back to my car, and I didn't stop shaking until my key found the ignition. Once I locked the doors, I let myself slump back in the seat, trying to breathe. My hands were trembling too badly to drive right away. I just sat there for a minute, doors locked, eyes closed, letting the silence of the forest surround me. Then I opened my eyes and froze. In the rearview mirror, something moved. At first, I couldn't process what I was seeing, but then it dragged itself into full view, just a few yards behind the car. That thing, slower now, hunched lower. Each step a painful effort, elbows tucked, claws dragging through gravel and leaves. Its chest heaved like a dying animal. It didn't look at me. It didn't need to. I held my breath, afraid even the sound of my exhale might draw it back to me. It paused, swaying weirdly as it sniffed the air. Then it kept moving, disappearing into the tree line. Only after it was gone did I realize I'd been sobbing. I turned the key, put the car in gear, and floored it out of there. When I got home, exhausted and still shaken, I didn't tell anyone. But a few days later, I looked it up, just to prove to myself it wasn't real. I found a missing person report, 2 years old, a hiker who vanished in the same area. His photo was grainy, but I recognized the eyes. I haven't run that trail since, or any other trail. Third encounter. We weren't supposed to go that far in. That's what I keep telling myself. Taylor and I had been exploring abandoned places for a couple of months. Old factories, storm drains, forgotten railway tracks. She was fearless, always the first to climb fences or crawl through collapsed walls. I tagged along, partly for the thrill, mostly because I was into her. Sharp smile, long blonde hair, and legs to die for. Being around her made everything feel charged. We heard about an old coal mine just north of the state line, deep in the cold, hollow woods. No marked trail, no road. Locals said it had collapsed decades ago, that nobody went near it anymore. Taylor grinned when she read that. Perfect. It took half a day of bushwhacking to find the entrance. A crumbling hole in the ridge, hidden behind thickets and vines. Cold air spilled out of it, wet and heavy. It smelled like mildew, rusted iron, and something else I couldn't name. We geared up. Headlamps, gloves, backup lights, cameras. Taylor strode in first, confident, her boots crunching on old gravel. I followed. Inside, it was like stepping into a tomb. Sagging beams, rusted rail lines, rotted planks. Our voices echoed too loudly in the stillness. We filmed small segments, mostly for her channel. She liked to narrate in this mock-serious voice, pretending we were on some ghost hunting show. Then we found the bones, not animal, too familiar. Some still had scraps of cloth on them. Taylor stared for a moment, then laughed, like she couldn't quite believe it. She said maybe someone planted them to scare people off. I wasn't so sure, but I laughed along, even though my nerves were fraying. We kept going. She led. I followed, trying to keep it together. Deeper in, the air turned warm and damp. That smell hit us again, stronger now, like something dead was rotting down there. Taylor went ahead to check out a narrow shaft to the left, her light disappearing into the dust. She didn't scream at first. She gasped, a sharp, horrified intake of breath. Then her voice, ragged, "Shit! No, no, no." And then she screamed. It wasn't a startled yelp or a frightened shout. It was a full, primal scream, the kind that clawed its way up from the gut and echoed down the shaft with a jagged edge of pure terror. Hearing it made something in me snap. I dropped everything and ran, flashlight beam jittering against the walls as I sprinted toward her voice. I ran after her, light bouncing wildly. I rounded the corner and nothing. Her flashlight lay on the ground, flickering, no Taylor. Then I heard her, deeper in. Her voice echoed back, fast, scared, saying my name. I followed, even though I was terrified, and that's when I saw it. At first I thought it was someone injured, crawling on all fours. But then I realized how big it was. Even hunched low and dragging itself, it was huge, easily the size of a bear, maybe bigger, but not quite as bulky. Its shoulders were broad, limbs grotesquely long, and its whole frame twisted like it had outgrown itself. The limbs bent wrong, elbows stuck out at sharp angles. One leg dragged, raw and useless. Its skin looked like wet stone, slick and gray under my flashlight. Blotches of matted fur clung to its back and shoulders, like a disease trying to take root. It was feeding on something. My light hit its face, just for a second. Its eyes were hollow. Not empty like sockets, but like all the light and thought behind them had vanished. It didn't blink, just stared, unblinking, as if it had forgotten how. Then I noticed its mouth. God, that mouth. It was elongated, almost like a snout, but too wide, like someone had taken a human face and stretched it until it tore. The skin at the corners looked raw, torn. The jaw hung crooked, unnaturally slack, almost broken-looking, but it moved, just slightly, chewing in slow, awkward motions. That's when I saw what it held in its jaws, a thick, bloody hunk of meat. I couldn't tell what it was. Then I saw the fabric tangled in the claws of its front paws, blue, familiar, Taylor's backpack. The horror hit me in waves. My body locked up, my stomach turned, my brain refused to believe what I was seeing. It made a noise, half growl, half moaning screech, and started moving slowly. I backed away, tried not to scream. Its gaze followed me. I turned and ran. I don't remember how I got out. I dropped the camera, almost dropped the light too. The tunnels blurred into one spinning nightmare. I burst into daylight gasping, collapsing in the dirt outside. For a long moment, I thought she was dead, that the thing I saw had gotten her. My mind kept circling back to that chunk of meat, the fabric in its claws. I stood there, breathless and shaking, unable to move, unable to think beyond the sheer weight of grief and horror. Then she stumbled out of the mine. I nearly collapsed when I saw her, filthy, pale, coughing up dust. Her clothes were torn, smeared in dirt and black grime. Her face was ghost white, her eyes wide and frantic as they scanned the trees. "Taylor!" I called out, my voice cracking. She looked around, saw me, and let out a half laugh, half sob. She was trembling, her well-defined legs barely holding her up. But she was alive, somehow. And then, despite everything, she smiled. Not out of joy, but out of some wild, disbelieving awe. "Did you see it?" she whispered, breath ragged. "Did you see that thing?" She kept asking. Like me, she was trying to make sense of what we'd witnessed. Her hands trembled, her voice cracked, but behind it all was something close to awe. Like she'd brushed up against some forbidden truth and wanted to chase it again. The police didn't believe either of us. They said it was panic, shock, but we knew better. After that day, Taylor and I were different, closer. It wasn't just shared trauma. It was the fact that we both knew it had been real. She began to stay over more and more often. We started hanging out beyond exploring and filming. Eventually, she became my girlfriend. Maybe it was because we both knew no one else would ever understand what we'd seen. We scoured the internet for days, then weeks. At first, we thought it might have been a feral animal, some sick bear, but nothing fit. The more we searched, the more stories we found. Scattered reports, rumors, cryptic forum posts from others who'd seen something in the cold, hollow woods. Ours wasn't the only encounter. Something has been stalking the woods around the old mine shaft for decades. It might have even been the reason why it was abandoned. Sometimes when I'm alone at night, I still smell that rot. Faint, sickly sweet. I know it's not really there, but I always check the doors and windows before it gets dark, making sure that everything is locked.